Good morning. This is September 9, 2019, and today I would like to address the United States chart and the stresses and strains that it's under. And at the time when it was initially created, at the time of the Declaration of Independence signed in Philadelphia, that we look at that chart and we see what were the inherent challenges that would be there for the nation and what would be the gifts. Now, one of the main things we discussed before is to look at in a chart where is the North Node. And the North Node, as we spoke right now in the heavens, is in Cancer. And this is where, as a global humanity, we are being called, as we discussed before, to be more motherly, kinder, more compassionate, more filled with understanding, more bringing in the feminine yin energies to heal the tremendous excess of yang that has been on the earth. So when I look at the United States chart, I say, okay, at the time of their birthday, which is the moment that this was all signed, where was their North Node? And their North Node, our North Node in the United States, is in Leo, in the 8th house of Scorpio. So that's an interesting combination, and let me explain it to you. First of all, the North Node in Leo means that the country came in to be a leader, to be, Leos are known for having big heart, for doing things in a big way, for being at times overly dramatic. It's not a surprise that the North Node in Leo would create a country that had a huge film industry, because Leo rules that industry. Having that North Node in the 8th house, it brings a sense that the country came in to go through revolution continually, to go through a rebirth of its own country cyclically. So it wasn't coming in where, if one looks more at Canada, there's more of a flat line of behavior despite the ups and downs, more of a gentle flow and not so much fierceness nor so much desire to be in the limelight. Whereas the North Node in Leo is bringing forth a tremendous karmic responsibility to be a leader. And having it in the 8th house means it's going to confront the major issues: birth, death, taxes, money, banking, scorpionic regeneration, sexual focus. And there is a lot of that in this country. People are hung up on it and have issues about it. And the South Node being in the 2nd house of values, the country has to remember its values as it moves into all these intensified states of expression. So that would be the first thing I'd say about it. The second I would say is that this North Node being in the 8th house, it's calling right now with the Pluto return coming up, because the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio. And we're going through this Pluto return on January 7th. So just one sec, here comes Fairy. Okay, Fairy, come on in. Go lie down, please. I'm sorry about that, but that's part of what happens here in our house is the dogs just have to be here when I'm giving a reading. So there's a wonderful capability for the country to rejuvenate. In other words, to get itself in a disastrous mess and almost look like its whole reputation is dying and its whole capacity to lead has gone out the window, and then to come back full force and actually take the reins again with at another level of being. So don't give up right now, as traumatic or as ridiculous as things seem right now, where we just seem in the center of the madness of King George. We feel swirling in irresponsibility and nonsense. It's and cruel acts of the complete opposite of compassion, the colder, more self-serving, materialistic aspect of leadership. When I look at charts, and when I look at your chart, if you came to me for a reading, the first thing I would look at would be, always I like you to leave a reading knowing your major gifts. I want you to feel the God-given talents that you've developed over many lifetimes and that you could pull forth in this lifetime. So even if, for example, you were a teacher, you may have a great talent for writing from other lives, and you may eventually, as your life progresses, end up writing more and more, or use your writing skills, or teach writing, or whatever. But the marriage of your basic gifts will eventually, in your later years, emerge and blossom. And some people blossom young. They seem to have, like Mozart, that capacity to come in and just be that gift from childhood. Others come in, they do one thing, they go through a cycle of one aspect of life, then they get married, they may have children or go through that segment of life, and then they may come to another passage of life and pull out that hidden skill and shock themselves that they're doing something they never thought they would do. For example, in my own life at age 60, I became an artist, and that's become one of the great healing experiences of my life. But it's something definitely, although I always had a passionate love for art, I always felt I had absolutely no gift with it, and that others had the gift and I would just be the one spending my life admiring it or feeling the intense, passionate expression of it. Okay, let's get back to the chart of the United States. So at this time, this Pluto for the chart is sitting in the second house of values. So Pluto at the time of the Declaration of Independence it had a powerful understanding at a soul level, because a country has a soul as much as a person has a soul. It's a conglomeration of all participation of all beings, and that is the soul of that country. So that country is going to go through a constant, having Pluto in that second house of values and day-to-day living, there's going to be a constant remaking and almost like we tank and lose our values and go into these ridiculous places of no values, to rediscovering our values and bringing them forth with a passionate intensity. So that's the second major thing I would say here. The third thing I would say is that I look where Chiron is sitting, because Chiron in our chart is where we are wounded. Where are we wounded? Where is our wound that we need to come in and heal? So then you've heard the expression, the wounded healer. We go to our deepest wound, be it abandonment or anger or fear or just not being able to live without drama, or whatever our wound is, or we're in a self-protective state, or all of the above. We go in and we really look to those wounds in states of self-reflection, or just through the sheer fact of living. And we look at those wounds and we work on those wounds, and then eventually I know in my own life that the greatest wounds that I've had to work through have been the wounds that I've then been able to help others work through, because I've found some sacred tools to help me go through those dark night of the souls and find passageways back to the light, and to be in an even greater state of awareness and of connection to my spiritual self. So the Americas Chiron is sitting in the fourth house. So that would tell me that at the time of the Declaration of Independence, there were a lot of hidden things being done to the feminine aspect of the country. Now, I think one of them would be the annihilation of the rights and lands of the American Indian. That was very intensified. And with that Chiron being in Aries, we could have done it quite brutally, quite with the sword, literally. And it's a hidden aspect that needed to be brought to the surface. And the second would obviously be building the country on the back of the slave trade and using those slaves. Some you treated them better than others, but in general it was an appalling scenario. And that was hidden. That was the fourth house represents our home, but it also represents our subconscious nature. So the subconscious nature of the United States could have been to be this proud Leo out there, follow me, I'm the path of freedom, Sagittarius rising, freedom, optimism, people wanting to come to this country because it represents something exuberant and alive and filled with fiery opportunity. But behind the scenes, we're lurking these secret wounds. And I feel that at this time in our country, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're confronting, are the wounds that we inflicted on the country through our choices, and now are being brought to the light by the Pluto return. Pluto does not leave anything in its wake. It is like Dorian. It just flattens everything and brings it all up to the surface, and it can be pretty ugly while we're going through it, but it's necessary at a divine level. It's going to clean out what's been hidden in this country for 200 how many years? Over 200 years. So that is the aspect of the Pluto return that we can be grateful for. The other thing is that with Pluto opposite Mercury, Mercury is how we talk to each other. It's how we communicate. It's how we write. It's how we treat each other in our families with our siblings. So it's like the friendships we have, the trips we take, and all of that. With Pluto opposing that Mercury, and Mercury being in the 8th house, it shows that we are capable of covert actions. In other words, we are not always living up to the words we say. And let's just look to the words of the Statue of Liberty and realize that from the very first moment, those words were not being lived out 100% truthfully. The Sagittarius rising was bringing forth this wonderful aspiration for people to look to and to gain hope and to come here with hope in their hearts, as they still are now. But the Mercury opposite Pluto, there was a lot of chicanery going on, a lot of stuff behind the scenes, a lot of deceptions. And with Mercury in the 8th house, I would say there would be a lot of development of covert operations and things like a huge intelligence system and a huge, because Mercury in Scorpio, in the 8th house of Scorpio is a lot about like the detective work behind the scenes, Mercury and Scorpio, they make amazing policemen, women, and they also are great investigative reporters. So there's an investigative quality and covert words and things going on behind the scenes to the United States that is relating to that Pluto. So when we get this Pluto return coming up in opposing our Mercury in January, there's going to be a lot revealed. And as I said in my last reading, things are starting to move forward on October 4th when Pluto goes direct. So we keep coming back to Pluto, but it really is important right now because it's the biggest transit that the United States is going through, and it's a cleanser. Just like you watch people in stages of death, people in stages of physical death, where they will initially go through denial, anger, isolation, going into depression, and then finally accepting what really is, and then having a rebirth of sorts within the soul, either through the physical form sometimes can recover and go into remission, or the physical form is left behind and the rebirth takes place by leaving the form. Well, what we're doing right now in this country is leaving behind a form of this country, a way of being in this country that is not working and will not stand up to scrutiny or expression in the next stage of where our world is going. So people have asked me, please write about the world, write about England, write about Kashmir, write about Germany, all that. We will go to those countries and look at their charts and their interactions, but of course we also can remember with United States having this Leo as its north node, its role, its karmic role to be the leader, that as I write or talk or speak here about the United States, it's affecting everything that way anyway, because of the impact of the fact that the footprint this country leaves on the world is so big and so heavy. And at times, right now, no words for what's going on right now. So, the nice part of this chart, we've got this beautiful Sagittarius rising, so that there's always going to be a return to optimism. It's why the audacity of hope and phrases like rebirth of the soul of America, recapturing the soul. People have got this wonderful American quality of finding hope again amidst the worst messes. And another thing is the ruler of Sagittarius, which is our rising sign, which is how the world sees us, our personality. It's kind of funny personality too, quirky. And I love Sagittarius people. They just have a wonderful, effusive nature to them. They don't listen always very well, but in general, they're joyful to listen to. I have 3 Sagittarius rising children, and to see the 3 of them together, it was just a constant comedic show going on. So the ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter is big, broad, full of positivity, sometimes prone to exaggeration, but really a marvelous planet, happy planet. And the Sun conjunct Jupiter is where I'm going to leave off with a positive note that we do have that with this country. So there is this wonderful capacity to come back and to be happy and to find new ways of living that bring joy. Thank you, and God bless you, and enjoy. And if you'd like to get a reading about where your challenges and gifts and opportunities are in your chart, just simply write me at Angelic Mercy 44 at gmail.com. Thank you. I send you love. I feel mercy for all of us. And may we find something today of hope and joy.